Facebook and Instagram went down for a couple of hours yesterday, leaving many of us wondering what the heck happened. Meta was being clammy about it, just offering a vague technical issue explanation and an apology. But that's not going to stop the rumor mill from churning. What are the theories bouncing around? It's probably unlikely that Mark Zuckerberg accidentally pressed the on-off switch, although Zuck, being a lizard, is still not out of the question. Some folks thought it might have been a wider internet issue, something tripping up a bunch of different companies, but that theory fizzled out quickly. Experts say that the outage was way too focused on Meta for it to be a widespread internet problem. Then came the cyber attack whispers. After all, it did happen on Super Tuesday, a big day for elections. Sounds kinda suspicious, isn't it? Well, cybersecurity agencies are throwing cold water on that theory too. They say a cyber attack is unlikely, which leaves us with a plot twist that seems most likely. Another internal Meta blunder. Remember the massive outage back in 2021? Turns out it all stemmed from a mistake engineers made while checking their network capacity. They basically issued a command to see how much space they had, and something went wrong. It ended up yanking the plug on everything. Now we don't have all the answers yet, and hopefully, Meta learned from their 2021 snafu, but all signs point to another internal error on their end. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for them to tighten up their internal systems just a bit more, because let's be real, a global outage isn't exactly a good look, especially for a company that has billions of users, a ton of which relies on their platform for business, entertainment, and news. Moving on, it seems our brief fling with Android apps on Windows 11 is going out a bit faster than anyone expected. Microsoft just gave the Windows subsystem for Android the good old heave-ho. They originally promised us a world where we could run our favorite Android apps right on our trusty Windows machines. But like an awkward first date that never leads to a second call, the whole thing's winding down by March 2025. If you have Android apps hanging out on your Windows PC, don't panic, they'll still work past the cutoff date. But even more drastically, as of March 6, you can't even search for the Amazon App Store on the Microsoft Store anymore. Talk about a swift breakup. Finally, this whole thing feels a bit like Microsoft tried to impress us by showing up with a fancy new feature, but then realized they had no idea how to make it work long term. It was sort of like trying to teach your grandpa to use TikTok. Good intentions, but the execution was a bit clunky. Amazon's trying to downplay the whole thing, saying they'll give developers and users a nice, soft landing. But let's be real. When your App Store partner talks about a smooth end of support experience, that's usually code for get ready for this to fade away awkwardly. The big irony is that Microsoft probably kicked this off as a way to show up Apple, who's been snagging headlines for letting you run iPhone apps on their fancy new Macs. But using Amazon's App Store instead of Google Play was sort of like bringing butter knife to a sword fight. Sure, there were some interesting apps in there, but most of the big hits we really cared about never showed up. Apple's in the hot seat. Again. Our favorite fruit-themed tech giant just got slapped with a whopping $2 billion fine by the European Union. And get this, the whole mess started because of Spotify and Apple's less-than-friendly rivalry over those sweet music streaming subscriptions. Apparently, Apple wasn't playing fair in the App Store and the EU is not having it. See, Apple's got this policy where if you're a music streaming app, you can't, and I mean absolutely cannot, even hint to your iOS users that there might be cheaper ways to subscribe to your service outside of the App Store. No sneaky links, no helpful pop-ups, nada. Just basically turn their users into sheep, blindly being led to the Apple-flavored checkout. Naturally, this rubbed Spotify the wrong way. I mean, who likes it when a multi-trillion-dollar company limits your options and forces you to pay more? So Spotify ran to the EU, tears streaming down its face, and complained that Apple was being a big old bully. The European Commission, who clearly loves a good tech showdown, swooped in for an epic investigation that took perhaps 30 minutes. Okay, Maybe the investigation wasn't that epic, but they did find out Apple was breaking EU laws with all these restrictions in place. Talk about anti-competitive. Now, the EU has ordered Apple to knock it off and slap the fine on them. You'd think Apple would be embarrassed, but they're planning to appeal, saying the evidence is flimsy. Honestly, the Apple versus EU smackdown is starting to feel like a long-running reality show. Always dramatic, always with high stakes. Will Apple finally learn to play nice? Will Spotify get to tell iPhone users about better deals? Or will this fight drag on for another decade with even bigger fines?